Okay, so are you ready to like really dive into Friends?
I think so.
We're about to unpack some serious analysis from these videos about this pop culture phenomenon. We're going
Yeah.
to be talking about like why it became such a massive deal, how its humor works, and like whether these characters actually hold up today.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because one of the things I was thinking about with this stack of video essays
Yeah.
provided is they really do dig into like the show's legacy and its lasting impact.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what you thought.
Yeah. We've got insights from like Stew Bagful, Triple Neon, Hey, Let's Talk,
Oh, wow.
like the works. What I thought was so fascinating was how these videos were saying there's actually a lot more to Friends than just like 90s nostalgia. What did you think about that? Was Friends just like a cheesy sitcom or something more?
Well, I mean, it's definitely more nuanced
Yeah.
than it might appear at first glance. If you think about it, before Friends, most sitcoms were centered around like traditional families or workplace humor.
Right.
And Friends really tapped into a new kind of cultural shift, which was the whole experience of emerging adulthood.
Okay, so let's unpack that for a second. Emerging adulthood, like what does that even mean?
So it's basically that phase of life, mostly in your 20s and 30s, where you're figuring out like careers, relationships, your own identity before settling down. Think about Monica's obsession with her career and finding the one.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And like Rachel's whole journey from like runaway bride to career woman.
Yes.
That totally fits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Friends really captured all those anxieties and uncertainties of that stage of life, but with a lot of humor,
Yeah.
It kind of normalized the hot mess phase for a whole generation.
Totally. And it wasn't afraid to like get kind of real sometimes too. Like remember that episode where Monica finds out that she might not be able to have children?
Oh, yeah.
They addressed infertility in a way that you just didn't see on sitcoms that often back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it made all those issues, all those anxieties, like something you could actually laugh about.
Right.
The lighthearted tone, the laugh track.
Yeah.
It kind of worked to make those heavier themes a little easier to digest.
For sure. One of the video essays, I think it was Stu Bagful, actually called it a subversion
Okay.
of the like classic sitcom formula. Is that what like made Friends stand out, do you think?
Absolutely, because instead of just hitting the reset button every episode like more traditional sitcoms, Friends actually let the consequences of their actions like linger.
Right.
Characters messed up, they made questionable choices, and they didn't always learn some easy lesson.
Which honestly is way more like real life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not always wrapped up in a 22-minute episode.
Exactly. Take Ross and Rachel, for example.
Oh my God.
Their on-again, off-again drama wasn't just a plot device. It was actually a very realistic portrayal of how messy and complicated love can be.
It's true.
And, sitcoms usually try to resolve that kind of tension quickly.
Yeah.
Friends let it play out, which I think is one of the reasons why it resonated with audiences.
Totally. And it's interesting you bring that up because that kind of leads into this whole Ross is toxic debate that's been happening online.
Right.
Did the videos address that at all?
They did, yeah. And some argue that even that was, like, intentional on the writer's part.
What do you mean?
Ross, with all his quirks and flaws, wasn't supposed to be, like, the perfect guy.
You're saying his character was designed to be flawed.
Exactly. He represents those ingrained biases we all have, even subconsciously. The humor comes from how ridiculous he can be, not from, like, endorsing his behavior.
Oh.
It's social commentary disguised as entertainment.
I can see that. Okay, but what about the whole Joey and Rachel thing? That still feels totally out of left field to me.
And yet, even that unexpected pairing could be seen as Friends' way of subverting expectations. The writers were kind of brilliant at keeping us guessing.
Oh, for sure. They definitely kept us on our toes. Like, they knew everyone was rooting for Ross and Rachel, and then they threw in, like, this curveball.
Exactly. They were saying, like, life doesn't always go the way you expect, right? And sometimes you end up with the person you least anticipated.
Right.
But that's part of what makes it interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Speaking of defying expectations, I wanted to touch on how Friends handled those, like, classic sitcom setups.
Yeah, because they did them in a very, like, Friends kind of way.
Precisely. So they took those familiar formulas, but they always gave them this, like, quirky, relatable Friends twist. Like, remember all those episodes where they played up the people are really weird trope?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, all of Monica's dates that were just a disaster.
Exactly. Each one was more outlandish and hilariously awkward than the last.
Totally.
And who could forget, like, those celebrity guest star episodes.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
they didn't just bring in a big name for a quick cameo. They gave them these, like, over-the-top personalities that completely threw the Friends off balance.
Like that time when Julia Roberts played Chandler's former classmate, and she was like, out for revenge.
Yes. Or when Brad Pitt guest starred as a guy who, like, hated Rachel from high school.
Oh, so good.
Like, they weren't afraid to make fun of themselves and their celebrity guests.
Totally.
And then, of course, we have to talk about those, like, first episodes
Yeah.
where the plot lines were so hilariously tangled.
Yeah. It's like, how do they even come up with this stuff?
Yeah. Right. I'm always amazed that they managed to unravel them by the end.
Yeah, like the one with the beach house with all the secrets.
Yes.
Just like pure chaos in the best way possible.
Clear chaos, exactly. And you know what I thought was interesting? Even within those farcical situations, they still managed to highlight the characters' flaws and insecurities, which actually made it even funnier.
Right.
But speaking of flaws, you know, the videos we explored, they didn't shy away from addressing how some aspects of Friends haven't aged particularly well.
You mean how, like, some of the jokes might not land the same way today?
Exactly. Like, when viewed through a modern lens, you know, some of those attitudes and storylines can feel, I don't know, a bit outdated.
Like, especially when it comes to, like, Joey's character, right?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of embodies that early 2000s ladies' man persona, which, let's be honest, can be a little cringeworthy now.
Little.
Yeah.
And yet, like, he was such a beloved character. Like, why do you think that is?
It's the charming goofball effect.
Yeah.
But as one of the videos pointed out, like, the show wasn't completely oblivious to how problematic his behavior could be.
Right.
For example, remember his whole friend zone rant?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
today, that scene is almost painful to watch.
Makes you kind of cringe.
Yeah.
So are you saying that, like, Joey was like a cautionary tale but disguised as this, like, lovable rogue?
Perhaps. But I also think he serves as a reminder that even flawed characters can be sources of both humor and, you know, reflection.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the tightrope that Friends walk so well. It could make you laugh at a character while also prompting you to question their actions at the same time.
It's a tricky balance to strike, for sure, especially in a genre that's known for just being, like, lighthearted.
Exactly. It requires, like, really clever writing and a willingness to kind of push those boundaries.
Right.
And while I think that we're successful for the most part, there were times when the humor, I don't know, it just fell a little flat, particularly in those later seasons.
Like that whole Joey falls for Rachel storyline, that never really worked for me.
Yeah, it did feel a bit forced, didn't it?
It did.
It's like they felt this need to shake things up in the romance department, and that felt like maybe the most convenient route, but not necessarily the most, you know, believable one.
Right. Like there was no foundation for them to suddenly become, like, romantically involved.
Exactly.
1 minute they're friends, the next he's, like, declaring his undying love.
Right, and it kind of highlights a common criticism of the show, which is that it sometimes relies a little too much on these, like, romantic entanglements to kind of drive the plot.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because, in my opinion, Friends is at its best when it focuses on the heart of the show, which is, you know, the friendships themselves.
Yeah, the small moments.
Yes.
The inside jokes, the unwavering support.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so relatable and rewatchable.
Absolutely. It really taps into that, like, universal longing for connection.
Right.
That sense of belonging we all crave.
For sure.
But I think it's important to remember that despite some of its flaws, Friends was willing to take some risks, especially for a sitcom airing in the 90s.
Okay, risks like what? What do you mean?
Well, for one, they weren't afraid to tackle topics that were kind of considered taboo at the time.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Ross's ex-wife, Carol, and her partner, Susan.
Oh,
They're
right.
a lesbian couple
Yeah.
on a primetime sitcom in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, that was pretty groundbreaking.
It was.
And, you know, they didn't shy away from actually depicting their relationship authentically.
Totally.
Like, they showed Carol and Susan's wedding, their struggles with parenthood, all while just completely normalizing their love story.
Totally.
And I think what's even more remarkable is how they portrayed Ross's evolution. Initially, he's, like, resistant.
Right.
But he eventually comes to accept the relationship and embrace his role as a father alongside them.
Totally, yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Friends is both, like, comforting and groundbreaking at the same time. It's like a warm hug and this, like, thought-provoking conversation all in one.
A perfect way to put it.
And that's maybe why, even with its like imperfections or
Right.
some of those like dated moments,
Yeah.
Friends still resonates with people today.
Yeah.
But speaking of relationships that stood the test of time on the show, we got to talk about Monica and Chandler. I mean, their relationship is practically a sitcom masterclass. You get that slow burn, that will they, won't they tension, and then bam, they become like this iconic couple.
And it works because their relationship, like the best ones on Friends, it's not just about romantic love. It's about like personal growth.
Okay.
They really bring out the best and funniest in each other.
You're saying there's a reason why, like, Monica and Chandler clicked the way they did. It wasn't just like the writers throwing two characters together.
Exactly. Like if you think about it, both Monica and Chandler, they start the series with all these insecurities.
Total.
Remember how Monica always feels like inadequate?
Yeah.
Especially next to like Ross and Rachel and
Yeah.
Chandler. He hides his fear of commitment behind all that
Oh,
humor.
totally.
Yeah.
Like, it's like those vulnerabilities actually drew them to each other.
Precisely. They understood each other's flaws, and in a way, I think they helped each other grow as people.
I can see that.
And a lot of the video essays highlighted how, like, their relationship actually became this whole journey of self-discovery
Interesting.
for both of them.
Yeah, and let's not forget how hilarious their dynamic was, too.
Oh my gosh.
Monica's, like, obsessive neatness
Right.
versus Chandler's, like, sarcastic chaos.
Well, the best.
Comedy gold.
Yeah.
But even with all the laughter, they still had their obstacles, just like in real life.
Absolutely. Their secret relationship back in season 5.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great example.
So good.
Remember all the lengths they went to hide it from the group?
I know. So nerve-wracking. I was always, like, on the edge of my seat, wondering if they were going to be found out.
Right. But I think it was Stu Bagfull that made this really interesting point about that storyline. They argued that their like secrecy wasn't just for comedic effect.
Really?
Yeah, it kind of reflected their own insecurities about their relationship.
That's a really good point.
Like they were almost scared to admit how much they actually cared about each other.
Totally. They had to, like, warm up to the idea.
Exactly. It took time for them to kind of embrace their happiness,
Yeah.
to step out of those roles they'd created for themselves and just like be together.
It makes their story that much more satisfying, though, you know?
Yeah.
They had to overcome all these internal hurdles to, like, find true happiness.
And isn't that what Friends is ultimately about, though?
Yeah.
Like finding your people, embracing all the ups and downs, and figuring out life as you go.
All while making us laugh along the way.
Yep.
And I think that's why, even with, like, its flaws and
Yeah.
things that feel a little dated now, Friends still resonates. You know,
It's just her.
it's like a time capsule of a very specific cultural moment.
Right.
Those universal themes of friendship, love, finding your place in the world,
Yeah.
those never go out of style.
I totally agree.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's a good reminder that no matter what life throws your way, there's always laughter, there's always love, and there's always the support of your friends to help you through.
Perfectly said. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Friends. It's amazing how much there is to unpack with a show that seems like so simple on the surface. It makes you wonder, like, what other pop culture gems are out there that we've only scratched the surface of? Something to think about until our next deep dive.